And number 2 is begin with the end in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about begin with the end in mind, it's basically saying, think about what you want and you will attract it. He's basically saying, begin with the end in mind and be proactive. So part of what I wanted to do is basically clarify for the listening audience how these 2 books are part of a series of things that can help you be successful. So I'm going to connect. I'm going to read a little bit. We'll kind of go a little bit back and forth on the concepts. But does that make sense to you? Tell me what you think thus far, Martha, about.
I think it does. I think it's just I think combining the 2 overall messages are important because I mean I think it goes back to what The Secret says from by Rhonda Byrne, the idea of persistent thought, so consistently. So I think a lot of us will get excited. We've decided we're going to lose weight. Or
I was just going to say. That's a whole nother show.
About January of every year, January 1st. And then, we're persistent for about a couple of weeks, maybe 3. And then, you just, 2 weeks, because I think 21 days makes a habit usually.
Yeah.
So then it just kind of, powers off. So
Right,
I think
right.
it's the consistency. I think a lot of us can relate to having that goal, thinking, writing it down, doing everything they say, like Stephen Covey says, in terms of the being proactive, writing the goal down. But then, life happens and you get discouraged and disappointment hits. And so it's a persistency thing.
Right. And what I loved about this book, there was a couple of things. So before I could go into The Secret, and I know my last 2 shows, we've talked about some things that you can do to be your best, to be successful in life, to be happy. But what I loved about this is we talked about Dr. Tart was on the show, and she's a regular. She's helping me co-write this book. And she talked about a paradigm shift. And what I realized is I had a friend of mine who I have a series of people in the community that I'm using as my forum, my community forum, right, for feedback. And one of them said, "What's a paradigm?" I was like, "Oh, you see, we're making assumptions that people actually understand these things." I've probably read 100 books. And so I think we're going to take our break at like the halfway mark, if that works. And then we're going to kind of just to set a clear foundation for those who are listening. So what I loved about, again, Stephen Covey's book, when he talks about the 7 habits of effective people, of highly effective people.
Yeah, highly.
Not just effective people, but
highly
effective people. His 7 habits, I'm just going to talk about, again, the first 2. But he says be proactive. And then he gives you a challenge at the end. He basically says, there's a proactivity concept as it relates to self-awareness. If you think about my topic, my title of the first section of my book is Our Journey, Our Dreams, the art and science of being aware and getting there. So he says there's this concept of self-awareness and then your consciousness. But then there's also he said we must focus on imagination and independent will, which means you got to be proactive. You got to take some actions in order to get what you want. So his challenge is for us to make small commitments. He said, be a light, be a model, be part of the solution. He also says, when you think about being proactive, decide what you want. Again, imagine, envision, like The Secret says, think about what you want, envision it, and you can bring it to reality. They actually go as far as to say, just by thinking about it, the universe will rearrange itself to help produce the outcome that you want. That thoughts become things. I know we've heard that. Thoughts become things. They talk about us as human magnets. And so what you think about, you attract. And I can tell you in my life, this is so true. So the reason I'm bringing this up is not because I read a book that I thought was so cool, but I actually believe this 100%. And I think a lot of people don't take control of their life. So when Stephen Covey talks about being proactive, he's basically saying work on the things that you can control, that you have control over. Work on you. Don't worry about the weaknesses of others. He said be compassionate about those weaknesses and The issue is your own chosen response to the situation,
Very true.
right? So at the end of the day, what these people are saying very simply is it really doesn't matter if you have crazy people around you. If your kids drive you crazy, they just are being crazy. You choose to be driven crazy.
Right.
Does that make
That's
sense?
true.
You choose to allow it to affect you in that way. And so his concept of being proactive says if you start to think that the problem is out there, stop
External.
yourself. I love that.
Yeah.
It's all you. Like your success, your happiness, the secret to the secret is it's you. You hold the secret to your success. That is the bottom line.